Can I take any for free? Presumably not. My name is Sami Ibrahim. I'm the writer of Two Palestinians Go Dogging, and I'm here in the Samuel French Bookshop to pick out some plays that have inspired me. I'm going to start with Mr. Burns by Anne Washburn. I think it's one of my favourite plays ever. I just think it's brilliant. She sets up all these characters and these stories, and then we'll just drop them because they're not really important, because what's important is the journey of this Simpsons episode told across 80 years and like retold across different time periods and by different characters until it sort of becomes a strange musical. Yeah, it's just amazing. I love it. It was one of those plays, I think when I first read it, that I kind of went, oh, you can do this with a play, and you can kind of talk about the Simpsons, and it just felt very liberating reading it. You don't feel like you can do something until you've seen it on the page or seen a writer do it. And Mr. Burns was one of those plays that kind of felt like it expanded what I thought I could write in a play. I've never seen it live. I've only ever seen it as a scratchy DVD of an archive recording. But it was, yeah, it's really good. I loved it. Oh, I'm going to go for John by Annie Baker, which is about a couple who arrive at a small B&B in Gettysburg. And I think I saw it and fell asleep in the first third. And then I moved. It just suddenly sort of clicked from this different seat. And the sort of stillness and quietness of it as a play just sort of came alive. And I wasn't asleep anymore, but was kind of on the edge of my seat. And it felt so vivid. It sort of ends up being about 3 hours on stage with lots of very long pauses, but the time kind of flew by. I just think the characters she creates are so detailed and beautiful. And I went on a real journey with John, seeing it live and kind of going from thinking it was quite boring and not very interesting to thinking it was one of the best things I'd ever seen. I'll do You For Me For You by Mia Chung, which I only read quite recently, but it's sort of about two sisters from North Korea who kind of go on parallel journeys, one of whom moves to the States and one of whom stays in North Korea. The thing that stood out for me was it was so bold in constantly sort of shifting form. The play never felt static because every sort of scene, it felt like it was renewing itself and doing something different. And there'd suddenly be a scene that was just stage directions, it would shift into something completely different. I've always loved reading plays or finding plays that have that kind of playfulness and are able to jump around and do lots of different things. And You For Me For You feels like a complete feast of ideas and forms and styles all kind of shoved into one story. And it played really clever games with language. There's a whole sort of strand running through it of a character who kind of learns English, and you hear the English-speaking characters from her perspective. As the play goes on, that gobbledygook becomes more and more coherent. And it's just such a neat trick that I feel like I'll end up copying one day. I'm going to do The Wolf from the Door, which is, I think, a stand-in for all of Rory Malarkey's plays, because I think he's a brilliant writer. I spend a lot of time stealing things from Rory Malarkey and his plays. I really love it because it's kind of the deadpan story of an odd couple that sort of twists and turns to become a story of a violent revolution taking place in the UK or something like that. It's just balmy and it's great, and it takes the audience on a proper journey and is really funny. Just the size of the ideas that it's dealing with, but also the character details. It uses a really irreverent style to deal with really big, not at all irreverent ideas, and sort of somehow smashes them or kind of mushes them together and has this kind of strange, dreamy logic. I'll do Chimerica by Lucy Kirkwood, which is also standing in for all of Lucy Kirkwood's plays, particularly the Welkin, but also the children. And basically all of them. But Chimerica was, I think, the one I read first, and just felt really thrilling reading something that kind of told such a big, ambitious story, but was really rooted in really beautifully kind of sketched characters, and I don't know, had so much propulsion and forward momentum. It felt exciting reading a play that felt like it was properly grappling with big kind of political ideas and wasn't afraid to kind of take on those ideas, and I don't know, it felt like it had something urgent to say about the world, but did it in a way that was really entertaining and fun, and strange at times and complicated. It felt like it was a play that was firing on all cylinders and was the kind of thing that I completely loved it. And I think it was mostly the ambition of it and feeling like I wanted to write stuff that could be as big and ambitious as that and could tell as, I don't know, stories that were as epic as that, which is why it stuck with me. Lindsay Turner directed it and pointed out that the sign-off lines are great. And I went back to it and they are indeed great sign-off lines. And it's a great play. I love it. Right, that's all right. We Are Proud to Present by Jackie Sibley's Drury. It's sort of about a group of actors who are trying to tell a story about the genocide of a tribe in a German colony in Africa in the late 19th, early 20th century. And both shows you the actors as they negotiate telling this story and the story itself that they're telling, and the sort of clarity of thinking and the way the play is put together and the way it sort of shifts back and forth between these two modes of storytelling and the way you kind of piece together this story from the past, but also realize that the way they're telling this story from the past is biased because of the only sources they have are of German soldiers. It just is really clever the way it all comes together and really kind of moving and powerful by the end. It also has just a real clarity of thinking and purpose, which I don't have often in my writing and would like to have. I think this and Fairview are just two plays that have just such clear kind of through lines and ideas, and yeah, I wish I could write with such clarity as Jackie Sibley's Drury. Rules for Living by Sam Holcroft is another play that has a real sort of clarity, the ideas that it's kind of playing with. So I think I really love it because it's sort of tells the story of quite a typical middle-class family Christmas with arguments and secrets and all that kind of stuff, which feels quite familiar as a subject for a play, but it kind of puts on top of it a very complicated and quite formally fun game in which rules are sort of set for the characters that the characters are kind of aware of, but the audience is told. Things like Matthew must sit to tell a lie, Carrie must stand to tell a joke, and you sort of see the rules that these characters use as a crutch, I suppose, to get through their lives, and it sort of becomes a play about being trapped in the rules you set yourself in order to get through, and these rules become kind of increasingly complicated and absurd as the play goes on. And it's found this like beautiful form and to tell a really clear story and unpick something that is actually really complicated to do with how we process our mental health and how we struggle with, or how we make sense of, I don't know, conflict and trauma and all of that. But she's found a really succinct and clear and interesting way to tell that story. Again, I'm very jealous of it. It's a really good play. Peter Barnes, who isn't particularly well known nowadays. I think I like him because he's completely anarchic as a writer. He's one of those writers that I think I stumbled across by accident on Amazon recommendations, kind of scrolling through plays to buy endlessly. He's got a play called The Bewitched that is sort of a grotesque, farce, intense drama thing set in 17th century Spain that's sort of about succession and impotence and the Habsburgs not having a proper heir and the fight to get a proper heir to the throne, and sort of has a scene they're bringing the Spanish Inquisition to the king and performing torture in front of the king in order to get the king virile again so he can grow an heir. And then there's a moment where the king grows like a 2-meter long penis and is paraded off the stage. And it's completely mad, and I'd never read anything like it. And to be fair, I don't think I've ever read anything like it since. But I always keep going back to The Bewitched, sort of a little bit scary and a little bit funny all at once, and slightly terrifying and hilarious and strange. And I think he gets that tone really well. And it's the kind of tone I like using in my writing every now and then. Yes, I'm going to head off home with my plays. Can I take any for free? Presumably not.